Hello everyone, and welcome to our second Digimon Adventure Novel reading. If you haven't listened to our first part, basically this is just a reading of Onkei's translation of the Digimon Adventure Novel, and this time we'll be reading parts 3 and parts 4 of chapter 1 of the first volume. Part 3, Mysterious Animals. They had waited a long time just to meet their partners. Their memories went very far. They could remember the glacier that had first covered the ground surface. Although it had long since melted away by now, they could remember when vegetation had first sprouted out of the bare earth and grown thickly into the lush environment they had now resided in. Although no one had taught them, they knew how to speak words. They even knew what their names were and who they were waiting for. However, what they did not know was, for what purpose. And yet, they waited. Confident that their partners would arrive from the skies, they faced the heavens day after day, calling out the names of their respective partners. One of them said, Taichi, another one said, Yamato, and others pitched in with, Sora, Joe, Koshiro-han, Mimi, Takeru. One day, the one who was waiting for Takeru saw the aurora in the sky. Look, everyone! All of them looked up. Instinctively knowing that the fated time had arrived, each of them stood still with bated breath. Some of them were so overcome with emotion that they even had tears glistening in their eyes. The sky glimmered brightly for an instant, and then they heard screaming from far away. Wah! Immediately accompanying the terrified cries were 7 children, who they could see were lumped together in a mass of arms and legs as they plummeted to the ground. Taichi! Taichi! Yamato! Yamato! So happy were they that they jumped great leaps of joy as each of them repeatedly called the name of their partner that they had been longing for. When a force separated the children still in the air into 7 different directions, each of them eyed the spot where they anticipated the partner would land, and hurriedly dispersed. With a dull thump, Yamato hit land. Ow! He cried out in reflex, but the truth was it hadn't really hurt that much at all. Surprised by the lack of pain that he was expecting, Yamato looked up at the sky. He was so certain that he had just been falling from high up there, very close to the stratosphere. Could he have been hallucinating? As his body had spun through the air during the drop, he'd thought he'd seen glimpses of something that looked like an island underneath him. That's weird, Yamato murmured, his head still tilted upwards as he stood up. A quick look around his surroundings confirmed that he was in the woods. For a moment, he was somewhere on the campgrounds, but the humidity that clung to his arms made him quickly change his mind. If this was really camp, it should have been much cooler weather. Anyway, more important matters were at hand. Hey, Takeru! He called out his younger brother's name. When he didn't receive a response, he tried again. Takeru? Turning in every direction, he repeated the same name over and over. But Takeru's voice could not be heard anywhere. Yamato could feel the blood draining away from him. If something happened to Takeru, what should I... Takeru! Takeru! Half crazed, Yamato continued to call out his name over and over. The face of his mother when she had left him floated through his mind. Takeru, where are you, Takeru? The corners of the boy's eyes ached with a burning sensation. His chest felt like it would flatten under the heavy load of his worry. If he ended up being unable to find Takeru... That was when he heard a shy voice say, Yamato? Who's there? Yamato shot back, stopping abruptly. Although he couldn't see anyone around, a chestnut-coloured stuffed doll with a horn on its head dropped to the ground beside him. Yamato wasn't sure how it was made to talk, but it blinked its eyes and... You're Yamato, right? Its mouth moved to the sound of words, as if it were really a living being. Yeah? Yamato had no idea what was going on, but he had enough of wits to know not to fall for a talking plushie. Searching his surroundings wildly, he said, Who are you? Come on out! And that was when, as if to emphasize its existence, the stuffed toy jumped up and down. It's me, Yamato, Tsunamon! I've been waiting for you for such a long time. Yamato's mouth dropped open, and stayed open. Sunamon spoke. You're looking for Takaru, right? I'll take you to him. I'm sure Tokamon has already found Takaru by now. Sora became very still. If seeing the strange pink animal with a blue flower decorated on its head wasn't enough, it had even spoken words to her. She considered screaming for help, but it would have been terrible if it caused this creature to get excited. The animal spoke up once more. I've always been waiting for you, Sora, it said excitedly. Its words were clear and understandable. That's why I'm so glad that I finally got to meet you. The thing wriggled the many protuberances underneath its head. She couldn't tell if they were feet or tentacles, and started to approach Sora. She immediately took a step back. Don't come near me! Sora shrieked hysterically in a voice that was unlike her usual self. Its flower dropping upon hearing those words, the animal said sadly, Sora, do you hate me? It's not that I hate you, it's just... Sora stammered frantically as she kept her distance. What the heck are you? I'm Pyokomon! I just said that earlier. No, what I'm asking is, what is a Pyokomon? Pyokomon is Pyokomon, the thing said simply, just like Sora is Sora. Gazing at Sora with its upturned eyes, it looked at her like a baby starving for the love of its parent. While Sora's heart couldn't help but go out to that expression, it made her feel uncomfortable at the same time. Although she wanted to deny it, its large eyes playfully enticed the maternal instincts which had lain dormant within Sora to awaken. Biting her lip, Sora then heaved a great sigh. All right, fine, she said. The affection you could feel from those bright blue eyes had stolen her. In any case, at least one thing I know for sure around here is that you're called Pyokomon. Rubbing a leaf between his fingers, Koshiro murmured another, How mysterious. This isn't a real leaf. It's similar to the green plastic grass you see in bento boxes, the kind they sell in convenience stores, he observed. Nevertheless, I'm quite impressed to see something as sophisticated as this. He was in a considerably vast forest. The branches of all the trees in the forest had leaf upon leaf attached to them, and although it wasn't an impossible task to do, it must have taken a lot of labour to replicate everything and make the forest appear so realistic. Even people with untrained eyes would have agreed that it would have been cheaper economically to just plant real trees in their place. It wasn't just the leaves. The pebbles at his feet looked like grey cubes of sugar that crushed just as easily, and the solid earth looked like dark caramel that was just as tough. So, let me ask you again, Koshiro said to the elaborately made creature next to him. It had never left his side since it had found him. You call this place File Island? That's right! The creature that called itself Motimon, its insides were probably made of some very high-powered transceivers, stuck out its chest as it answered proudly. I must say, this theme park is made extraordinarily well. Koshiro-han, what's a theme park? You don't know? Nope! Perhaps the opening date for this park was a long way off, and the person speaking through this machine, whose accent was clearly from the Kansai region, was playing dumb. That was why Koshiro was able to say, well, never mind, with an indulgent smile. Anyway, Koshiro-han, everyone else is waiting, so let's get back to them. When he had touched Motimon's round body, it had felt like rubber. Maybe it was created from that foam rubber Hollywood was known for using in its creations. Although a pretty expensive process, it was probably nothing but snack money to these people, if the lengths they had gone to create this artificial forest was anything to go by. Okay, I got it. Can you take me there? Okay! The creature looked almost beside itself with happiness as it moved along the ground in a shuffling walk. Koshiro reasoned to himself that it must have wheels hidden underneath. In all 11 years of his life, Joe could honestly swear that he had never dealt with anything as utterly and unexplainably bizarre as this. A strange animal that looked like an experiment between a seal and a seahorse gone wrong was chasing after him. In a mischievous voice, it cried out, Joe! As it floated in the air. Wait for me, Joe! He would have been able to convince himself that Joe was an animal roar similar to Gya or a woo, but except for the wait for me bit was clearly Japanese. Maybe the structure of its vocal cords was similar to maybe a parrot. But even so, wasn't this thing a little too fluent? Which led him to a single conclusion, a monster. The minute he thought that, Joe screamed, "That's impossible! It's too unrealistic!" So could this mean this was a dream? But upon meeting him, the animal had immediately rubbed Joe's cheek with something that looked very much like a flipper. In fact, it was exactly like a flipper. That slippery feeling and that stinky smell of raw fish from its breath, that told Joe that this was absolutely, positively not a dream. Although it was extremely hard to believe, but this was stone-cold reality. "Why are you running away?" shouted the incarnation, chasing behind him. Its very existence bulldozing him over the common sense Joe had so carefully cultivated throughout his 11 years. Joe could only run for his life. In any case, this must be the first time that Joe had ever used all of his energy to run like this. His pounding heart felt like it was trying to explode through his chest. That figure of speech, heartbreak, must not have been an exaggeration after all. Wait, this isn't the time to be thinking about that. Joe screamed, "Please, I'm begging you, go away, just leave me alone." His voice was so strained from his exertions, it was almost shameful to hear. "Takeru!" With Tsunamon leading him through the forest, Yamato came upon Takeru along the way rather abruptly. "Ah, brother!" Takeru raced towards him happily. Yamato searched Takeru's face for traces of tears, but just couldn't find any. He had been so sure that Takeru would be crying helplessly without him around. Within his arms, Takeru was holding a piggy bank, or some object with a pudgy, comical shape. Realizing where Yamato's gaze was directed at, Takeru replied, "Ah, let me introduce you. This is Tokomon," and he shoved the ornament thing up at Yamato's face. "Hello, Yamato!" it squeaked. It wasn't an ornament at all. Just like Tsunamon that had brought him here, it was a living animal that could speak words. "Tokomon said that he's been waiting for us for a really, really long time," Takeru explained to Yamato. Then he turned to Tokomon and said, "Right?" Smiling with his entire face, Tokomon agreed brightly, "Right!" His younger brother readily accepted the existence of these strange beings. Yamato could only be tongue-tied with awe at Takeru's ability to quickly conform to his environment. Perhaps because Takeru was still a child. They're all children. His belief in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy hadn't even disappeared yet. Apparently, the harsh reality of their parents' divorce had not poisoned Takeru's pure soul, and Yamato found himself to be glad that his little brother still kept such innocence. "Tokomon said that there are more of his friends around," Takeru said excitedly. "There's Koromon, and Tanemon, and Pukamon, and Pyokomon, and who else? Tsunamon!" "Tsunamon would be me," Tsunamon said, its cheeks glowing bashfully. "Oh, I see. It's nice to meet you." Takeru greeted it with a small bow. "I'm Takeru Taichi." After exchanging greetings, Tsunamon exclaimed, "Come on, let's go to the others," and bounded off with hurried jumps. Takeru ran after it, still carrying Tokomon in his arms, and Yamato was left standing stock still, unable to comprehend this situation. The only answer he could come up with that satisfied him was that this was all a dream. He must be dreaming that he was with Takeru in his fantasy land so he could temporarily forget about reality. If that was the case, then it probably wasn't a bad idea to play along for a little while. A sheepish smile forming on his lips, Yamato raced after Takeru. When Taichi landed, he had lost consciousness, with his hand tightly clutched around the small device that had appeared from within the aurora. Now that object was blinking furiously as it flashed a bright light. Taichi finally opened his eyes. But it wasn't because of the light flashing that had woken him. Set right in front of him was a pink thing that looked like a rugby ball. Someone had drawn large red eyes on the surface, which blinked as it stared down at him. The bottom half of the rugby ball split open to display a large mouth glistening with small, sharp fangs. And it spoke. "Taichi! Taichi!" It spoke. Taichi's body immediately went rigid. Yeah, what the heck? Its round, cat-like eyes crinkling. The thing gave a toothy grin as its entire face glowed with happiness. "Taichi, you're awake! That's great!" And then it tried to leap at Taichi's face, reacting more out of sheer surprise than anything. Taichi pushed a hand in front of to stop, and rose hurriedly to his feet. You can talk? How do you know my name? What the hell are you?" Confusion raging in his mind, Taichi could only shoot off questions in rapid succession. The pink rugby ball introduced itself. "I'm Koromon!" "Koromon, wait, so you're Koromon because you're small and round?" Taichi asked. Cormon itself didn't seem to know where its name originated, so it cheerfully answered, I'm not sure about that, but anyway, I've been waiting for you forever, Taichi. And then it tried leaping at Taichi again, but Taichi swerved his body to avoid it. What do you mean that you've been waiting for me? Just then, the tall grass nearby rustled, and the junior that Taichi knew from their club, Koshiro, poked his head out of the wilderness. Koshiro! Taichi cried out. But upon seeing the pink mollusk-like animal moving beneath the other boy's feet, Taichi went on to exclaim, there's another one. What the heck are these weird things? It claims that it's a Digimon, Koshiro replied, shrugging his shoulders to indicate that he was also confused. Apparently, this place is called File Island. Have you ever heard of it? File Island? Taichi had never heard of it before. Wait, so this is an island? I believe so. Curling a hand around his chin in thought, Taichi walked over to a sturdy tree nearby and climbed its trunk as easily as a monkey. Settling on a branch, he brought out a mini telescope from within its shorts pockets to review his surroundings. Let's see. In front of him, he could see the forest stretched out for miles. What lay beyond was hazy to him. To his left towered a steep white mountain, so high that its summit was covered by thick clouds. To his right sparkled a bright blue ocean, looking as pitch-perfect as the ones you'd expect to see celebrities posing in on the front of magazines. I guess that the ocean is there. It really does mean this place is an island. Thinking he should ask Koshiro for his opinion, Taichi shoved his telescope back into his pocket and leapt out of the tree. He got straight to the point. I saw an ocean, but it may have been a lake. It doesn't matter whether it's an ocean or a lake, Koshiro said. It still means we're not in the Mikami Canyon, but there's still Mount Fuji, isn't there? Look, see that mountain over there? Taichi said, pointing to the jagged-looking mountain on his left. That doesn't look like Mount Fuji to me, Koshiro retorted. Next to him, Modimon piped up in a confident voice. That's called Infinity Mountain. Infinity Mountain? That's right. Taichi and Koshiro shot dubious looks at each other. Neither of them had ever heard of that name before. While they were figuring things out, the other children soon gathered around them. Each of them was led by a Digimon partner made of various shapes. Sora and Pyokomon, Yamato and Tsunomon, Takaru and Tokomon, and with a piercing scream that announced his arrival, Gyaa! Joe appeared. When he recognized the familiar faces he had met in the shrine, Joe sighed with relief. Sadly, it was blown away when his gaze shifted to the monsters lying at their feet. Stiffening, Joe's face paled even further as he let out a wail. Oh, there's more of them. Losing his strength, he plopped onto the dirt. This was how the seal and seahorse mutant monster finally caught up to him. Zooming happily into Joe's back, it said cheerfully with its rank, fishy breath, I'm Pokemon! Nice to meet ya! Joe stared back at it, dumbfounded, as if he was seeing the world crumble before his very eyes. Looking around, Yamato asked, Is this all of us? I think I remember one more person who was with us at the shrine. Oh! Joe's head snapped up as he cried out in realization. Mimi-kun! Mimi Tachikawa-kun isn't here! Tanemon was having a hard time answering Mimi's question. Where did I come from? It echoed, tilting its head. But I've always been here. Mimi did not believe it for a minute. That can't be right. I know what you really are, she insisted. So, what planet did you come from? Go on, tell me. Mimi never believed in UFOs. The subject was hardly even brought up as a topic of discussion among her friends and family. But when this strange creature suddenly appeared in front of her and she realized that she wasn't dreaming, how else could she explain it? Surely this leafy being must be an alien that had come from outer space. I mean, think about it. Mimi reasoned to herself in her mind. The universe is a very big place. It probably didn't come from a planet in our solar system, but it would make perfect sense to find tons of ET living around the nebula. I was always here, waiting for you, Mimi. Tanemon spoke to Mimi, as if it was appealing to her. It fidgeted with its small limbs, or whatever Mimi thought they were, as it looked at her apologetically. What does this mean? Mimi's thin eyebrows furrowed as she frowned in thought. Maybe this wasn't Earth at all. Maybe the water that had shown up in front of the shrine was actually a UFO. Maybe the aliens had beamed her up and flown billions of light years and brought her to this planet that looks so much like Earth, where she will spend her days for the rest of her life. I don't like that, Mimi cried out shrilly. If that's true, just take me home, take me back home to my papa and mama right now. Mimi was actually a very nice, well-behaved girl by nature. It was just that, in some cases, she would respond to the inner logic that she formed within her head and with disregard for whatever was actually said to her during the conversation. It often caused many people, even friends, who were talking with her to become very, very confused and unable to know how to carry out the conversation. In other words, Mimi would get angry, cry, or laugh at the drop of the hat, regardless of what the topic they were previously talking about, and the person she had been talking to would be left with completely no idea how to deal with her. That was exactly what was happening right now. In Tinymon's eyes, Mimi had gotten upset when it was mentioned that it waited for her, and now it thought those words were the cause of Mimi's anger. The thought saddened it, because Tinymon wanted Mimi's acknowledgement and appreciation more than anyone else. Tinymon was also not the type to delve too long into logical thinking. When Mimi yelled, it didn't really understand why, but it became increasingly sad. To express those feelings, it burst into tears. Even if you ask me to do that, Tinymon trailed off into sobs. Mystified at the alien's sudden wailing outburst, Mimi instantly became silent. Perhaps the aliens from the Tinymon planet were actually very nice, and they simply just wanted to be friends with Earthlings. Although she was panicked by them at random to represent the Earth, treating their offer like this would be a very bad form on her part. It would be ridiculous to believe that this little mess-up would cause Earth and the Tinymon planet to wage war, but Mimi still agreed that it was necessary to try and form friendly relations first. "Oh, don't cry. Please don't cry," Mimi soothingly apologized to Tinymon, as though she was comforting a small child. "I'm sorry. It was my mistake. You're right. I'm sure the two of us can be friends, so come on, dry those eyes." Flashing her beautiful trademark smile, which had captured the hearts of many male students, she held out her hand to Tinymon to offer a handshake. In this pose, it wouldn't have seemed out of place if Mimi's shoulder bore the insignia with the words, "Ambassador of International Peace." "Okay." Tinymon stopped crying, but it was puzzled over how to respond to Mimi's outstretched hand. Unsurely, it outstretched the leaf from the top of its head and touched Mimi's hand shyly. And the commemorative first contact between Earth and the Tinymon planet had been successful, Mimi thought with a relieved sigh, when all of a sudden a loud vroom sound droned above their heads. It must be a UFO, Mimi thought. Part 4. Attack of the Stag Beetle Monster. Kya! A young girl's scream, shrill enough to rip a hole through silk, reached their ears. "It's Mimi-kun!" Joe cried out in alarm. But because he did not have the courage to take the initiative, he turned to Taichi and Yamato instead and asked hesitantly, What do you think happened to her?" Instead of answering him, Taichi broke into a run. He had heard Mimi's scream reverberating from their right, in the direction of the ocean. "Wait, Taichi! Taichi-san!" Sora and Koshiro chased after him. Yamato had a late start because he urged Takeru to climb onto his back first. "Wait, I'm coming too!" In the end, Joe tagged along, bringing up the rear. Mimi, with a small Digimon that looked like a plant bulb at her heels, was heading from the children's left towards their right. "What's wrong?" Taichi asked, when behind Mimi came a thunderous vroom, bringing along a sudden gust of wind that scattered leaves all over the ground. What's that sound?" Sora asked, to which Koshiro immediately answered, "Look up there! There's something in the skies!" The leaves of the overgrown trees made it hard to see what it was, but Mimi's screams continued. "I don't know what's up there, but we have to save her." Using the swift legs that he prized, Taichi chased after Mimi. Sora lined up perfectly next to him, keeping pace. Clearly, being the two-top duo that the Odaiba's soccer club boasted of was not just for show. Koshiro did his best to keep up behind them, while the additional weight of his brother on one set of legs dragged Yamato quite a distance behind. Joe was even further behind. Kya! Now the children could see Mimi. Perhaps she had heard the others' voices and turned from under her pursuer's nose, or maybe she was running randomly through the forest and just happened to come upon them. But whatever the case, she was rushing towards Taichi and the others at full speed and... "Ah!" Taichi and the others cried out. It was finally clear to them what was chasing after Mimi. An unbelievably giant stag beetle with bright red body that was almost harsh on the eyes. The ear-splitting sound of drum and gusts of wind were caused from its enormous wings. "It's a stag beetle monster!" Koshiro yelped. Next to him, Mochimon corrected. "No, it's Kuwagamon!" But its words were drowned out by the buzzing of the monster's wings. No! As Mimi ran, she could hear the thick snapping of wood as the enormous stag beetle chopped apart branches with its pincers as it closed in behind her. Look out! The monster chomped noisily as if it was testing its bite. Open and close, approaching until Mimi could almost feel the sharp edges of it grazing at her back. And then, this time, the pincers opened widely for its final bite, and the monster screamed in triumphant anticipation before Sora ran across from Mimi and tackled her to the ground. They avoided death only by a hair's breadth. So close were they that the sound of pincers closing on air rang painfully through Sora's ear canal, a heavy metallic sound like two large hammers hitting each other. After looking up to make sure the monster had flown off, Sora turned her head down to Mimi and asked her, "Are you all right?" Both of them had mud and dead leaves stuck onto their clothes and hair. Mimi herself couldn't seem to believe that she was still alive, and she dove into Sora's arms, bursting into frightened tears. There, Sora said soothingly. She gently patted Mimi's long hair. "You're safe now." "But it's coming again!" Yamato hollered, far away and high in the sky. The children could see the stag beetle monster make a wide U-turn and head in their direction again. "What do we do?" Joe asked Taichi with wild panic in his eyes. Unconsciously, Joe felt that Taichi was someone he could depend on. What? Taichi himself did not have a plan. His desire to beat it before it was killed then was strong, but he had no idea how to go about that. "We don't have weapons to defend ourselves with," Koshiro reasoned, evaluating the situation. "Then what?" Joe shook with fear as his eyes fixed on the stag beetle monster closing on them. "Let's run," Yamato suggested. The weight of Takara on his back made him choose to be passive, as long as it kept his younger brother safe. "All right, let's run." Frustrated that he could not think of another option, Taichi agreed. Vroom, vroom. The stag beetle monster continued to attack the children, but whenever it did, they would flatten against the dirt and leap into the thick grass, just barely escaping with their lives. Even so, they didn't know if they could keep running away forever. The moment they ran out of stamina would be the exact moment they became stag beetle food. As much as they wanted to believe that their smaller selves had more stamina than the monster, they couldn't. Boom! Its pincers hit thick rock and vroom, the sound of its wings went away. All right, it's gone. The children cautiously stepped out of the shade of the rock ledge they were hiding in. The front half of it had been blasted to pieces by the monster's previous attack. "If only there was a cave around here somewhere," Yamato whispered, turning to look at Tsunamon. He asked, "Do you know of any?" Tsunamon shook its head, looking sincerely apologetic. "Oh no, I'm sorry. It's not your fault." It was Yamato who ended up feeling ashamed for the trouble. "Anyway, we shouldn't just stand here. Let's hurry up and move on," Joe said as he stood up. He had finally recovered from the panic at seeing the monster for the first time, and once again felt responsibility as both the oldest and the group leader. The children set off again. Tokumon rode backwards on top of Takaru's hat, so to keep an eye out behind them. Now it cried, "It's coming again!" And all of a sudden Taichi, who was in the lead, stopped. "Oh, crap." The children saw right away what was blocking him. What lay in their path was not more road, but a cliff. "Can we climb down this?" Sora asked as she looked over the edge. Below them was a thick, dark jungle that made her think of the Amazon, with a stream that wound through it like a snake. Not even adults, let alone children, could get down from this height. "It's coming!" Tokumon yelled, baring fierce fangs that no one would have expected from its cute appearance. "No more!" Mimi cried with tears running down her cheeks. As if acting on an invisible signal, the Digimon who had clung to their children all this time started to walk away. They began to retrace their steps back to where they'd come from, dragging themselves, or hopping, or moving on tiny feet. "What's wrong, Koromon?" Taichi asked, looking puzzled. "If you're leaving us, at least tell us where you're going." "We'll never leave you," Koromon said, looking back at him. Its face was set with a look of tragic determination. Koromon and the other Digimon went past the rear of the children. This was where Yamato and Takara was, and lined up sideways as if they were soccer players forming a body wall to block a free kick into the goalpost. "We'll protect all of you, Taichi." Saying these words, Koromon turned a fierce glare at the stag beetle monster. His eyes gleamed with the spirit of the challenged, who at last took up the gauntlet. "Stop! Don't!" Taichi and the others would have turned their faces away if they could, but their worry overcame their fear as they looked on. It was obvious that these small Digimon were no match against this enormous stag beetle monster, yet they challenged it to battle. First, Koromon and the others spouted what looked like bubbles from their mouths. Perhaps the bubbles were extremely acidic because the monster unexpectedly fell from balance and its pincers dug into the earth. Without a pause, Koromon and the others pressed on with their attack. But once the stag beetle monster repositioned itself, the severe counters it gave the small Digimon with its 6 limbs, stiff wings, and sharp pincers hurt them 2 or 3 times more than they did to it. The children couldn't stand watching anymore. Why are you going so far to protect us? Without even a moan passing its lips, when the stag beetle monster slapped it violently into a large tree trunk, Koromon immediately leapt at the enemy again. What gave strength to Koromon was its determined purpose and desire to protect Taichi. Of course, the other Digimon, Tsunamon, Pyokomon, Mochimon, Tanemon, Pukamon, and Tokamon were the same. Taichi and the others may not understand, but we have always waited for them. We dreamt that when they came, we would do so many things together. We must fight so that those dreams become a reality, and we must win. There's not a chance that we'll let our dreams be crushed in a place like this. But we know with our bodies how powerless we are. There is a wall of overwhelming odds before us. We can't climb over it with our physical strength, our offensive ability, or even with our willpower. We want power. We want to become stronger. Much stronger. Taichi screamed, "Koromon!" Yamato, "Tsunamon!" Sora, "Pyokomon!" Koshiro, "Mochimon!" Mimi, "Tanemon!" Takeru, "Tokamon!" And even Joe cried out, "Pokemon!" It was then that 7 streaks of light came down from the heavens and engulfed their Digimon. What's that? For a second, the children lost sight of their Digimon within the bright light. It can't be, but the next instant, child-level Digimon who had accomplished evolution appeared before them. Koromon, evolve! Agumon, baby flame! A cream-coloured Digimon shaped like a small dinosaur spat out a breath of fire. Tsunamon, evolve! Gabumon, petite fire! A wolf-like Digimon standing on 2 legs spouted a ball of fire. Pyokomon, evolve! Piyomon, magical fire! A pink bird Digimon shot out a spiral of mysterious fire. Mochimon, evolve! Tentomon, petite thunder! The red ladybug Digimon's electric attack looked similar to lightning. Tanemon, evolve! Palymon, poison ivy! A green Digimon with a bright red plume on her head stretched out her hands, which became ivy that snared the enemy. Tokamon, evolve! Patamon, air shot! A Digimon who looked like a hamster with large ears swelled his cheeks as much as he could and spat out a ball of air. Pokemon, evolve! Gomamon, marching fishes! Last of all, a Digimon who looked exactly like a seal cried out, calling a large number of different coloured fish that flew through the air out of nowhere. Faced with attack power that was incomparable to before, the stag beetle appeared to be taken aback. Whether it was having a hard time of it or had just simply given up, it spread its wings and fled. What just happened? Although relieved beyond measure, the children did not have a clue to what was going on. Koromon and the others had disappeared, and in their place, 7 unknown Digimon with bruises all over their bodies were gazing back at them. Koromon's dead! Taichi wailed. The other children joined his cries. But one of the newly arrived Digimon, the small, cream-coloured dinosaur who looked both friendly and fierce at the same time, giggled and smiled good-naturedly at Taichi and said this, "I'm Koromon. Now that I've evolved, I'm called Agumon." That was the beginning of their adventures. In this manner, sharing laughter and tears, mutual encouragement, and momentarily disputes along the way, the children and their Digimon set off on a long, long journey. I hope you enjoyed the second reading of the Digimon Adventure Novel. As per last time, I will be linking Onkei's translation in the link dump. I will also be editing this episode a little bit differently from the last time following some listener feedback. I did some silence removal, which usually for a podcast episode is fine, but for a reading of a book doesn't sound so good. It sounds a little bit fast, so I'll be really limiting that silence removal and just keeping in the natural breaks that I have, because it just makes it flow better. But for a normal episode, it's not so good, but for this kind of episode, the breaks are good. I'll also be adding in a sound effect between the part breaks. So we had the 2 parts in this episodes, so those will be separated by the Digivice sound, just so it flows a little better in that way too. So next time we'll be covering the rest of Chapter 1. And so just continue reading along or listening along however you feel. I plan to release these at least like every 2 weeks or so, depending on time and availability and life things. So the link dump's linked in the description. Our Redbubble is also linked in the description, and you get more than just shirts there too. You can contact us and stay updated. You can email us LostinTranslationmon@gmail.com, or you can comment on this episode or message us on SoundCloud. You can follow us at @TranslationMon on Twitter, and you can find us on LostinTranslationmon on Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We have a discussion thread on With the Will and a Reddit thread in the Digimon subreddit. And we would appreciate if you would review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and any other podcast listening app that you use. And we have a website, vote and polls, check out our release schedule, which I've been updating with this new plan with the commentary episodes, as well as the novel reading and any other ideas I come up with. I'll be updating that release schedule, so check that out. And we occasionally have blog posts too. You can donate to our Patreon, which is linked in the description, from as little as $1 a month. That gets you access to a listed Discord server, but there are higher levels and more rewards, such as notes, early and raw episodes, and more. And thank you to our current supporters on Patreon: Joe, Anime Guy, who is Anime Guy Kurosaki 1 on YouTube; Stephen Reeves, who is Wildwing64 on Archive of Our Own; Kaidawashi, Chisai, who you can follow on Tumblr at Chisai236, Kyle, Tom, Anthony, who is Anticlassic on Twitter, Lismet, who is Elecmon on Tumblr, Nicholas, Sam, Noam, Spiral, Keith from the Friends and Firelight podcast, Magnus, and Annabelle. You can also make a one-off donation on our PayPal, which you can find in the description. It's paypal.me/airjamon. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!